We're seeing exactly what photographer Andrew Russell came upon at Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm standing in the midst of history here in the famed Sunken Road at Fredericksburg, Virginia. Off to my right, in December of 1862, 7 failed Union assaults took place towards this stone wall, trying to take this sunken road and, of course, the famed Marie's Heights off to my left. Now, this wasn't just one battle here in Fredericksburg. There was a second one that took place in May of 1863. In fact, 18 months of hard war came across this landscape. The civilians who lived in this area, like Martha Stevens, who had a home near here, will see more than 1,000 bullets riddle her house during the First Battle of Fredericksburg. In fact, a shell will crash through her home, explode in this road, and will strike Thomas Reed Roots Cobb, mortally wounded in the leg, and he will bleed out a few hours later. Another man was named John Rogers Cook. He was also wounded, but in the head. He'll survive, and the brother-in-law of Jeb Stuart that he was will be wounded 4 more times during this war. We also had the Innes House. Today we have monuments to Martha Stevens and Thomas Reed Roots Cobb. And we also have homes that were once out here sitting up on top of Marie's Heights, known as Brompton. But the most famous photograph to be taken in the Fredericksburg area is probably one taken on May 3rd, 1863 during the Second Battle of Fredericksburg. That battle took place between Union and Confederate forces, and men from Maine, New York, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin assaulted across the open plain that was once here towards where we're standing, tangling with William Barksdale and 2 of his Mississippi regiments. I invite you to step in with me to see this famous photograph, which most people think was taken in December of 1862, when in fact it was taken on May 3rd, 1863, just a few hours after the battle concluded. We're seeing exactly what photographer Andrew Russell came upon: dead Confederates. These Confederates would have been killed in action, some by bullets, some by bayonet. This hellish landscape would play out here, and this hellish story came together as Union forces came over the stone wall, jumped inside of this road, and at least 40 Confederates were bayoneted, according to Medal of Honor recipient Charles Clark. You know that the bayonet was used freely. You can see here an Enfield musket with a bayonet on it. More muskets with bayonets affixed are here as well. You'll notice down inside of this road a trench. That trench was actually cut by the Confederates, improved this defensive position. Why? So you could go up against that wall, step down into that trench, load, step up to the wall, fire, step down, reload. We know that they're firing a lot. You can see these cartridges spread out. Some of the men were probably killed in action, and as they're firing so much out here, the Confederates actually have to take those Enfield muskets and ram them against that stone wall so that they could lodge the bullets. And sometimes they couldn't get that ramrod out. They'll fire it downrange, ramrod and all. You'll also notice out here other things like hats, a slouch hat from another soldier that was here. You'll notice a spacing of these soldiers who met their untimely demise here at Fredericksburg. They're at least 3 yards apart. These men were so thinly spread here that there was a Confederate every 3 yards. It's not enough to stand up against this Union tide that came against them. In the distance, you'll notice a house. This was a neighborhood. I mentioned the Stevens house. I mentioned the Innes house. That would be the Hall house. The Hall house was a 2.5-story wooden structure owned by Joseph Hall and had only been constructed in 1859. But it's so riddled with bullets that it has to be taken down because of these 2 battles. You might see the open plain behind us where more Union assaults took place in December of 1862 and May of 1863. In fact, Mercer Square, the original agricultural fairgrounds, once sat right near us. Fredericksburg boasts one of the oldest agricultural fairs in the United States. And of course, you have this road itself. Remember, this was an active roadway. It was the I-95 of its day. It would lead you 50 miles north of Washington and 55 miles south down to Richmond. And that's exactly why these 2 armies come through here over an 18-month period. Washington is the United States capital, Richmond is the Confederate capital. But in May of 1863, this picture was taken by Andrew Russell, a photographer who came here a mere few hours after the Second Battle of Fredericksburg, after Union forces came through here, took this stone wall, seized the road, carried Marie's Heights, and moved on to a place called Salem Church.